Hello, everyone. On behalf of College Prep University, I'd like to welcome you to our webinar, Impactful Extracurricular Activities. This is definitely drawing a lot of attention. I know there's a ton of questions that students and families have about how they can stay active while being sheltered in place, right? So we're going to cover a bunch of FAQs and all kinds of good information for you in this webinar today. So my name is Dr. Nicole Corgi. I'm here with my colleagues, Dr. Kay and George Maylott, and we're going to be splitting up the presentation. A couple of housekeeping items. First is throughout the presentation, we will be referencing a lot of resources and websites. We will be sending you the full list of resources by email when the presentation is over. So you'll be getting all of that, so you'll get all the links. The second thing is we are going to go through the formal part of the presentation and then do a Q&A at the end. So if you have questions while we are speaking, go ahead and send those through the question box in the bottom of your screen, and we'll go through as many questions as we can after the formal slides. So with that, I'm going to just quickly show you our agenda. So we're going to really address three basic questions today. Why are extracurriculars important, for the college application process? What are the colleges looking for? And what you can do now, all right, to remain a competitive applicant. So I'm going to pass the presentation over to my colleagues to go ahead and take it from there.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Corgi. Appreciate it. Alrighty. So I will be going over why extracurriculars are important. Now, if you look to the image on the right-hand side of the screen here, you might recall it from one of our previous webinars. We used this as a really great visual to understand what the admissions review process entails. And so before we kind of talked about grades and test scores and writing, that was a very popular webinar as well, how to frame how great your students are. But on the bottom right hand of this diagram, you can see extracurriculars are a significant part of the admissions review process. And so what extracurriculars and activities and involvement really do is they provide the college with insight to you as an individual past grades. So what this allows us to do is answer questions like, well, what have you done besides going to school? As admissions readers, all three of us have read for a number of schools. The first thing that you usually get on our end is grades, test scores, a little bit of context, and then it's up to the student to share with us why they're great, what they've done, what are they planning on doing, and who they are as a person. And so that's why extracurriculars in this webinar is really critical, because it helps round out the student. So again, if you look at this diagram, I like to be a very visual person, and we do this a lot with students so that it clicks. It's not just having the 4.0 GPA. It's not just getting really high scores on your SAT, ACT, and AP exams, which are happening right now. It's not just writing about yourself, but it's also taking advantage of all the amazing opportunities that there are. But because things are looking a little bit differently, that does not mean that we get to kind of pump the brakes and slow down. We still need to take advantage of extracurriculars. We still need to volunteer. We just need to be a little bit creative given our current situation. So I'm going to go ahead and pass this over to my colleague, Dr. Kay, who's going to talk about the next question.
So I'm just going to sort of pick up from what George was just sharing. So when colleges are looking at you, they're looking at your entire contextualized application. So we've talked about this in the last presentation that we did about personal statements, and I'm going to mention this again here. We want to make sure that the activities that you're involved with align with what it is that you want to do. So from an application standpoint, us as admissions readers, your students who are applying and want to be read by admissions readers, they have to understand that they're going to be looked at from a holistic perspective. So having activities that make sense and that are related to what they say they want to do matter. And those things can still exist within the confines of you being at home. All of us work with a number of students. We've helped them adapt their activities as it relates to, okay, now we're all at this stay-at-home order, and or we're living with sort of some adjustments. So how do we still be able to be competitive considering that? This is an opportunity for students to showcase their greatest skills, to be able to show college admissions leadership, their community service, any creative talents that they have, areas of cultural engagement. And this is really sort of like what we're going to frame this presentation on today. I'm going to pass it over to my next colleague who's going to take the next slide.
Okay. So what I wanted to do at this point is kind of put a pause on what we can look at students engaging in now and give you an idea of what kind of has been the norm. So you have some kind of frame of reference as to, what do competitive extracurriculars look like? We get this question all the time. Students want to know, well, should I do this or should I do that? Or, what's better, this or that? So what we have on the screen here are really kind of the top high-end competitive extracurriculars. If you are a really competitive applicant and you're applying to a very competitive college, these are some of the things we would expect to see in your application. And you can see I have two columns, one for STEM and one non-STEM. So we'll look at the STEM first. So students who are really, going above and beyond in their extracurriculars are doing some of these things. They are doing research either on their own or with, a university professor. Sometimes they're actually employed in their field. Many students actually have, it's usually through the research with a college professor, have opportunities to publish, what they've been studying. So these are, like I said, kind of more highly competitive traditional situations. For non-STEM majors, we're looking at a variety of things. Usually students would have, maybe attended one or more, what we call a summer residential college program. Maybe they went through a leadership development program or some sort of business focused program, something where they were in an intense summer situation. Usually they will have been involved in multiple activities with multiple leadership roles. They may also be doing some self-study, or they may have chosen the path of just really focusing in and doing a lot more with their education by taking a lot of classes, outside of the traditional high school schedule. So that's where we're coming from. And what we want to do is kind of see, what's going to change in this environment moving forward, knowing that, everyone is at home and not able to do some of these things. So I'm going to now pass this on. All right.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Corgi. So one thing that we urge all of our students is to understand that you don't have to do this alone. Whether you'll be the first in your family to go to school, or maybe your parents and older siblings have been out of school for a really long time, know that admissions does change quite frequently, and admissions is changing very rapidly, almost on a weekly basis now because of our given situation. But understand that you should try to leverage your resources and your network. So part of the advice we give is you can reach out to others who are already doing great work. So for anybody that's class of 2021 and younger, reach out to graduating seniors or ask your school if they have an alumni database so you can ask the class of 2019 what school kind of looks like, how they're adjusting to the transition, what they did to get into their dream colleges in their schools. You can ask, again, former alum, or the easiest thing is often identifying who the most active peers are and asking them what they're currently doing. Now, if you know that nobody's really doing much, then that's a great opportunity for you to showcase all of the things that Dr. K was mentioning that admissions readers look for. So cultural engagement, leadership opportunities, formal and informal, and all of those great things, that's a great starting point. Another great resource that we are encouraging our students to reach out to is to ask your school counselor. They may have great local opportunities. I know when a lot of us were still working in schools, we would get emails and they would tell us of great opportunities, and they would have a very short timeline. I'm talking scholarships that had to be pushed through within a few days, volunteering opportunities. One in particular that I received that was amazing is a student exchange program with that's a partnership we had with our district and our city. Where it was tied to a school in Germany. So we did like an exchange program, and we sent 5 kids and then we received 5 kids. But a lot of students are not aware of these opportunities because they're not asking their school counselors or their college counselors. Know that they are often gatekeepers of really great opportunities. So we often joke that they should be your best friend, right? And last but not least, we urge that you find somebody who can compile and complete a holistic review of everything that you've done, of your activities, and what they say about you and what you can do to make yourself a more competitive applicant as it ties into the entire scenario. So CPU does that, and we do that very well because, again, we're admissions readers and we've been working in this industry for a really long time. And so when you connect with us, we go ahead and look at your student's entire academic profile. We look at what they've done, what they need to be doing, and we give them very tangible examples of what they can do moving forward and very creative examples of what they can be doing right now. And Dr. Key is actually going to touch on that currently.
Okay, so one of the things that I really want to stress for my students who are graduating the class of 2021 and thereafter, for the class of 2021 very specifically, is that we have an opportunity from now, May through August, early September, to really deepen your connection to your major. We're going to give you some specific tangible examples of what that looks like a few more slides down, but I really want you to be thinking about framing. If I say that I want to go into engineering, I want to go into business, I want to go into journalism, how am I utilizing this time that I have now to deepen my connection to that? The other thing that you can do during this time period that we have now is you should be adding or making adjustments in order to strengthen your holistic profile in terms of like the college admission process. So we have, again, from about now until August to really analyze where we are and figure out what we need to do in order to move forward. With the students who I work with personally, we literally just got done going through their entire profiles and saying, okay, this is an area of improvement that you kind of need to work on. So these are some things over the summer that you can do that are going to give you an extra competitive edge because you want to go to these competitive schools. Now, it's not too early for my freshmen to my rising juniors because you should really be utilizing this time period to create the framework of who you are. One of the biggest things you'll see, and this is shown under student example 2 that Dr. Corgi will go over, is this is an opportunity for you to craft and create your experience in terms of how colleges are going to experience you and the level of ownership that you take over the activities that you're involved in. Colleges are typically really impressed when a student says they're interested in something, but then takes the earnest and the ownership over those activities, and they're not necessarily waiting for someone else to create this. So if you're at a school and you're a young female and you're interested in coding, you're not waiting for someone else to create an opportunity for you to get involved in coding because you're creating it for yourself, and you're going out and you're creating opportunity for you to learn for yourself, and then also opportunities for you to expand and share that learning with others. Now I'm going to pass it back over to my colleague. Sorry, 1 second. It looked like I went too far.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Awesome. So what can you do now? This is the last part that we're going to kind of go over. And what we wanted to do for all of our webinar participants is give you really tangible examples that you can take with you. Here's a list of 10 that we're going to go ahead and look at. You can submit for publication. So there are quite a number of student applicants that are doing this. You can go into self-guided research projects like we mentioned earlier. Now, the thing, right, about competitiveness, although we mentioned it would be best to go ahead and do a research project with a professor, it's okay if you do something self-guided. It's okay if you do something that's short, as long as it connects to your overall holistic application. Number 3, starting an online business. Often students think that they have to file and create like an entire business model or a business plan and actually pay taxes. Well, you can actually go ahead and start a lot simpler. You can create, we'll get into the details, but you can use creative websites that are available. Taking online classes. If you were part of some of our previous webinars, we stress this amazing opportunity. We are in a time where online classes are absolutely golden. Okay, so if there's an opportunity at your school to take a community college course, to take anything over summer, or if you need more examples, you can reach out to us. We have a number of them. Developing a phone app or learning how to code an application is another great opportunity. Learning a new skill on YouTube. We often joke that you can learn so many amazing and useful things, and maybe some not so useful things on YouTube in a few hours. So being intentional with what we're consuming while we're online can actually improve our college application process. Number 7, continue to practice your craft creatively. We have a number of students that are involved in martial arts in every discipline and at every belt level. And so a lot of them have not been able to go to practice regularly or at all. And so we're encouraging our students to go ahead and practice on their own time, create videos for others, or just watch videos of experts in their field so that they can at least mention in their applications that they are still attempting to practice, to improve, and they took that diligence for themselves to do so. Meeting with your club or org digitally. I know there's a lot of school orgs that are not meeting at all. And so if that's not happening, it could be up to your student to encourage that to be a new trend and to take the leadership within themselves to continue to meet. They can organize a fundraiser, which kind of ties into number 10, which could be identifying a need or problem and begin solving it. And so we are now going to go ahead and start with the first student type and some examples.
Okay, so with all of our examples that we're going to go over, we've tried to categorize them into groups so that students might be more drawn to one group than another. It doesn't mean you have to pick one or only do an example from one area. It's just we've tried to group them by basically by like personality type or work style type. So this slide is really some ideas for students who are, you know, really highly motivated. They're willing to put in the time. They're very self-driven, independent. They can multitask. You know, if you're going to start any of these things, you need to have those skills or those qualities. So the 3 examples here, the first one is submit for publication. So like we mentioned, you know, traditionally, this would really mean, you know, working with a college professor, doing some research, and then being listed as a co-author or something like that. And some of you may already be involved in that, and that's awesome. But if you're not, you have some self-publication options that you can utilize. The first one is, you know, these online zines or, you know, kind of just online publications that exist. A really, really common one and something that's very easy to publish to is Teen Ink. So if you write poetry, if you write short stories, there's even a section on there for college application essays. It's a very cool website if you haven't looked at it. Again, it's called Teen Ink. Another way to get published is to do it yourself. Right? You can actually publish your own items and sell your own published items through Amazon. Again, very easy to do. So if you have, some creative writing or just whatever, and you want to, get it bound and sell it, you can do that directly on the Amazon website. And like I mentioned before, we will be sending you links to all of the resources that we're mentioning. So that's an example of publication. The next are self-guided research projects. Now, these are very informal. A lot of students think that, well, it doesn't count if I'm not in some sort of structured activity. And actually, it does count. It counts a lot. And in my personal opinion, I think it's even more impressive when a student will take the time to do their own thing. So if you are researching something, test it out, figure out your own experiment, or build something, on your own. You have a lot of students that are involved in robotics, and, doing the school project or your team project is amazing, but you can have your own side thing going on too. So, build your own. Try things out, be creative, and all of that counts. You just have to put the description and the wording and write about it in a compelling way to get it through to the admissions officer. And then the third example here is to start an online business. There are so many people doing this right now. Doesn't mean that it's, overdone, but again, it shows initiative. It shows all of these qualities that, colleges are looking for. If you come up with an idea, a product, something you want to sell, very, very easy to get started on any of these three platforms: eBay, Etsy, Amazon. So think about, if any of these projects sound interesting to you. Again, these are very time-intensive options. They're not necessarily better than the other things we're going to talk about, but they do require a lot of self-motivation and a lot of multitasking. So if you're going to commit to something like this, you're taking on a lot, but that's a good thing. All right, so I'm going to pass it back for the next slide.
All righty, thank you. So student type 2 is a type of student who is a little bit more creative, who's a self-learner, who's an explorer, and who is dedicated. So some of the extracurricular activities that this type of student would want to take part of is taking an online class. So again, it can be at a community college. There's a lot of schools that are offering shortened versions of classes as well. The reason why we here at CPU always push for community college courses is because if a student can pass it, not only do they often get an extra boost to their GPA, but again, if they can pass with a C or better, most often they are able to transfer that credit in. So we always get super excited about those opportunities. But again, this is a great opportunity for students to explore potential classes, potential majors, or just kind of things that pique their interest. As an admission reader, I always find it refreshing when a student mentions, I decided to take this class because I had never heard of it before, or I decided to give anthropology a second chance because when I got exposed to it in my 9th grade year, I completely hated it because of AP Human Geo. So I want to go ahead and give it another go. So that's always really neat to see. Another thing that is often not as difficult as you may think is developing a phone application. But the first step to that is learning how to code. So as mentioned in a few webinars back, you can learn how to code for free through Code Academy. There's also tons of really great organizations that are out there that will allow you to join their organization, which will grant you access to different coding languages. And after you learn those coding languages, you can slowly but surely create a phone application. The more creative you are, the better. The more unique the application are, the better. And again, for our students studying STEM, this is a critical skill that we want to see them get involved with. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, YouTube is a great resource now that where you can learn a new skill. So for our more creative students that like to be self-learners, learning to play an instrument could be a really interesting thing when students are applying to schools. Developing a skill set past what they're already doing, maybe in their college courses or even at their high school, and continuing to practice their craft in creative ways, such as doing things on your own, teaching others. A pro tip from us here at CPU is to try to provide mentorship opportunities that shows a lot about your character, that shows a lot to the reader, and really improves your chances. All right, so now we're going to get into student type 3.
So student type 3 is more of a traditional student. They have some social interaction and they may also be considered a helper. So when we're looking at that in terms of what that looks like right now in this time and space that we're in, we have students who can still take advantage of and have been taking advantage of speech and debate or Model United Nations, where they're actually still competing. They're still getting the same amount of time in towards the activity that they were getting in person, but they're just doing it online now. Another thing that a student can do is organize a fundraiser online. One of the things that we've seen that's really relative to where we are right now is students setting up food banks in relation to COVID-19. So in order to adhere to the social distancing, they're coordinating with drop-off locations to be able to do curbside drop-offs. So that's actually a really big deal because they're still able to contribute and give back while still adhering to the stay-at-home order that we're currently under right now. The last thing, which I thought was like the most interesting out of all of these things, is that you're actually able to host a virtual gala. So if a student has a need or a specific thing that they're trying to raise funds for, I've seen students raise funds to make sure that students in other countries have shoes, have computers, have backpacks, have supplies, and all of these different things. So you're still able to facilitate the same thing that you'll be doing in person, but you could actually do it at home. In the example that's listed in the resource, what they actually did was a pajama gala, which I thought was interesting because you may not have the luxury or the opportunity now to go shopping for a beautiful dress or a tuxedo or access to means in order to have makeup and get your hair done and do all of those things. But you can still participate for these cause activities in real time right now, and people are actually doing it. So I do want to underscore what Dr. Quirky said at the beginning of this section when we talk about the activities that students are doing. These 3 different types of students, there are some students who actually fall in all 3 categories, and that's fine. So you may be a student who's really ambitious in terms of doing some research, you may take some online classes, and you may be involved in planning a virtual gala at your school. It's not like you have to be exclusive to one of these categories. You can sort of fall in any of these categories. So we're going to give you a couple slides down. Georgia's going to give you some strategies very specifically as to how CPU helps students in navigating this process and figuring out very specifically what your student can be doing during this time in order to maximize it and so that they can look the best that they can in terms of the holistic process. All right, so a little bit about us here at CPU. So CPU, we really aim to make sure that we give students and families information so that they can make the best decision that they can. So we've come up with a series of presentations that we're gonna be given over the next 3 months, really homing in on what's important right now. So right now, based on the registration, I know that I'm talking to a lot of juniors and junior parents, so rising seniors. You're concerned about what's gonna happen with test scores, what activities my kids should be doing, what colleges should they be applying to? How is this really going to be affecting me? So one of the things that we pride ourselves on is making sure that we give you accurate and timely information so that you can make informed decisions. We're working with a lot of seniors right now who are debating whether or not it may be the best idea for them to take a gap year. So depending on that student situation, the answer may be different. But of course, you want to consult with someone who can help give you a more guided approach to doing that. Something unique about our approach here at CPU is that we are 100% online virtual in terms of providing the service. So students are able to log onto their laptops or computers and meet with our counselors, and we're here to help navigate them through their process. Our packages are based on like the need of students. We've had a couple people in our other webinars who are sort of like, well, I don't know which package to choose. We do a consultation with the family in order to sort of figure out what might be the most appropriate for their specific need. Something else that makes us uniquely different, and Dr. Corky and George have mentioned this throughout the presentation, we're actually counselors in the industry who train others in doing the work. So myself and Dr. Corky have both spoken on national platforms as it pertains to college access and admissions. We've gotten students into top tier schools. Collectively together, I believe we have about 40-year plus of experience in this industry. So this is really something that we have become experts in over time. After the webinar, we're going to follow up with you with a link of all of the resources that are listed that we talk about during the presentation. I think it's really important to make sure you have those resources. It's also really important to make sure you know how to apply those resources. So again, CPU is here to sort of help you with that process. I'm going to pass it back over to George, who's going to talk about our strategies as it pertains to helping students map out their extracurricular activities. And then again, we're going to close out with a Q&A. On the Q&A, you can take a screenshot of our webinars that are coming up. Invite your friends. For this particular webinar, we are really close to the max. I'm excited to say that because we've been pretty close to the max over our last couple of webinars, and the ones that are coming up have just a few more spots left. So if you have not registered, we urge you to register. Now passing it back over to you, George.
Awesome, thank you, Dr. Key. So again, here are some of the resources. Again, we'll be sending you all of these as well as a link to the video recording of this and all of that great stuff so that you can remain connected. Again, our approach here at CPU is very tailored to each of our families and each of our students. And so whenever we think about what CPU can do for you, it really is dependent upon where your student currently stands. And I can confidently say that with all of the students that we've worked with, it doesn't really matter where their starting point is, because there's always room for improvement. And so again, collectively with our boundless years of experience and our relevant experience, that's the one thing that again, we want to highlight here at CPU. We train the counselors that are in the high schools that are helping your students apply to college. And we're very relevant because we are still reading applications for the admissions teams. And so when your student joins us and we connect them with one of our counselors, we're able to take a very nice and slow approach to what it is that they actually need, how it connects to their major. And sometimes we have students who come in with, I have no idea what I want to do. That's perfect. You're a blank canvas. We're going to help you paint. We're going to provide you with the canvas, the easel, the brushes, everything that you could ever think of. And we're going to ensure that you get to that final masterpiece, which is your dream college and your dream career. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and transition us over to the Q&A section. We have quite a number of great questions. Again, I want to urge all of you, if you still have some, go ahead and put them in that question box down below. Alrighty, so one of the first ones we got in the beginning was, how long does the activity have to last in terms of hours? And can these hours also count towards community service hours? That's a really great question.
George, I can go in and comment here. I'm going to address the second part. Yes, your activities can count, quote unquote, count in multiple categories. Something that you do for your community counts as an extracurricular and as community service. When you start to fill out your college applications, you'll see, how all of this information is organized. And we can help you best decide which category to put it in. Should you put it under community service? Should you put it under extracurriculars? Where does it best fit? So yes, you can double dip. The first part about how many hours, there is no number per se that a school is looking for. What the college is looking for is really the impact that you had while you were involved. So in some activities, you could spend hundreds of hours doing something, but if you really didn't, contribute in a huge way or take on a leadership role, like for example, you could be the member of a club for 4 years, but if you never participated in any events, if you never take on any projects, if like all you did was go to the lunch meetings, you know, every week for 4 years, you rack up a lot of hours, but that doesn't really say much, you know, it doesn't really show that you were that committed. As opposed to, you know, something maybe that only lasted for a week, you know, and you only actually participated in something, you know, 6 or 7 times, but you were like really involved and had a lot of responsibility. So don't worry so much about the time. It's more about your impact, your leadership, and the skills that you developed through that activity.
Awesome. That was a great response. Thank you. Oh, this is a popular one we get all the time, which is, will being a part of a prestigious program like Stanford Summer Institute help me the most?
I'll take that one. So I've seen a lot of students say, I'm going to do this particular program because it's going to be the thing that makes or breaks my admissions. As someone who reads for admissions, my take is that it's more important, very specifically, what you're going to be doing as a part of that program. Dr. Corgi mentioned this when she talked about student type 1, where these students are taking the initiative and they're going out and they're doing their own research. And from an admission standpoint, honestly, that's a little more impressive than just signing up for a program because of the namesake. We all know that programs like Stanford are amazing and you're going to have a great learning experience. But that may not be the best learning experience depending on the type of student you are and how invested you are in terms of creating knowledge and creating resource for yourself.
Awesome. Let's see. We have a question here that says, if my student prefers community college versus AP classes, does that matter? So I can tackle this one in part because when you think about AP classes, they're a great opportunity. They'll give you a GPA boost. They make you look more competitive when you're a applicant to a college, but so do community college courses. And often as readers, when we see community college courses, that for me looks a little bit more impressive because it's at another level. And one of the benefits, again, of taking community college courses is if you can pass the class itself, you will get those credits. And so having a decent amount of college credit will actually help you stand out compared to your peers. That's also the other thing you want to think about when you're going through the admissions process. You want to ask, what are other students in my school doing? And what is my student doing to kind of set themselves apart? So if everybody's taking the same 10 AP classes that your school is offering, and your student is deciding to branch out and take different courses for whatever reason, as long as they frame it correctly and they explain the rationale and they do well in the other courses, it's going to help them out significantly. Alrighty. Oh, this is an interesting one. So what if my child has certain limitations to the activities he can participate in?
I think that's a really great question, and I think it's covered under my section specifically. When we think about students having limits in terms of the activities that they can be involved in, I think that it's really important to make sure that we include what those limitations are as a part of the application. So I've worked with students who've had limited mobility or they couldn't be involved with particular activity for whatever the reason may have been. So in the application, we're making it a point to make sure that we describe that out. And then we're also looking at how do we maximize what we can do within our different ability that we do have. So maybe my limitation is that I can't run, but I can do speech and debate. So looking at other alternatives in order to still make sure that we're putting together a competitive application.
Great. We have a comment here that says, will we be repeating the seminar? It seems like they're really enjoying it, and having another one would be great. So thank you for that. Another question here is, what are some extracurriculars for business administration majors besides something like starting a business? It's a really good question.
So some of the things that I've actually seen my students do in terms of, if you're interested in the business, is finding someone who owns and operates a local business and doing sort of an apprenticeship. Now that would look different based on the timing of us having a stay-at-home order, but they may also reach out to some companies, owners who operate online businesses. So if a student wanted to figure out if someone runs an online boutique, how they operate that boutique and sort of like what their experience is, they could reach out to the owner and maybe they can do an internship with them in order to be able to gain some insight to what that looks like. So again, that may not necessarily be an activity, that's not an activity that most students would necessarily do because it's very directed towards, I'm interested in business, I may want to own and operate a business, so I'm doing this specific thing that isn't associated with more of the common programs.
And then one quick thing that I would like to add to that one is you have to keep in mind for business and engineering and a few of the other majors, there's concentrations. And so if your student doesn't know there's concentrations, we might want to, let them know that. And then from those concentrations, they can explore the different ones. And I think that is another great activity that they can talk about. So they can understand the difference between marketing, finance, general business, international business, or whatever it is that they want to do. So again, if you're saying, oh, maybe we don't want to start a business for whatever reason, the alternative, like I mentioned in my section, would be to find some classes, utilize their free time to go and watch YouTube videos and things like that. Let's see. Okay, another.
Before we go to the next question, George, I just want to acknowledge the other comment that was made. We will be doing this webinar again next month. If you go to our Facebook or you go to our website, you can actually see when we're going to be redoing this webinar.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Dr. K. Okay, it looks like we're winding down on time, so we're going to take one of the last questions that came in, which is a really good one as well. What are the best type of extracurriculars for an excellent student who is not decided in what they want to major? So right now they're undecided.
So that's a really great question. And the answer is there, again, really is no best item. What we want, with students that are undeclared, my advice is always, do what you want to do, get involved with what interests you, what you enjoy doing, and then make the most of that. Again, the colleges, they honestly don't have a hierarchy of what's better than something else. They're looking for what you achieved within your context. They're looking for leadership, they're looking for initiative, they're looking for accomplishment. And whether that be within a sport, within technology, within community service, really doesn't matter the context. It's more about the achievement, your dedication, your passion, what you've learned, and how you convey that experience through your application.
All right, so that is our last question for today. I do urge you all to come back and join our other webinars before they are booked out. Again, we will be giving this webinar again next month, so check our website and our Facebook and our other social medias for that information. I want to thank you all for joining College Prep University for this workshop today, and we will be in touch with you soon. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.